Well, hello, welcome back to another biology lesson. And today we're thinking about natural selection. We're going to think about what it is. We're going to think about an example of how natural selection works, and then think about what do we need for natural selection to happen amongst a species. And as we do that, it's really helpful just to remember from last time that all species show natural variation. All species, whether it's dogs, there's lots of dogs, they're all the same species, but there's masses of variety. And in humans too. We're all humans, but there's masses of variety. And some of that variety comes from the environment we live in, the clothes we wear, but some of it comes from the genes we inherit. And that's what we're going to focus on today, the inherited characteristics. So what is natural selection? Well, natural selection is the process by which organisms that are the most suited to their environment survive and reproduce, and so they pass on their genes. But what does that actually mean? Let's look at an example. And in this example, we're going to think about peppered moths. And peppered moths are a species of moth, and there is variation in their colour. Some peppered moths are really pale, and some of them are quite a bit darker. And if we imagine that we are living in, that they are living in a wooded area, and there are some trees, and these trees have got very pale bark. And on this pale bark, the paler peppered moths blend in better. And what does that mean for them? Well, it means that any predators, maybe some birds, find it harder to see these pale moths and find it easier to see and so eat the darker peppered moths. So what happens? Well, the dark ones are eaten, the pale ones are able then to survive, and so they reproduce. And then they can pass on their genes, and we get more baby pale peppered moths. Now, an interesting thing happened at the start of the Industrial Revolution, because factories started pouring out lots and lots of smoke. And that soot that was in the smoke started to get onto the trees, so the trees got darker. And now the pale peppered moths start to stand out a bit more. And so they can be seen more easily by the birds, whereas the darker ones blend in better. And so which one is now most suited to its environment? Well, it's the darker peppered moths. So they're going to survive, and they're going to reproduce and make more baby darker moths with those preferred genes, which are more suited to their environment. So what do we need for natural selection? Well, we need variation in the population. We need, for example, in this one, we've got both light and dark varieties. And some of that variety gives individuals in that population or in that species an advantage, makes them better at surviving. So they are able to reproduce more, and the less well-adapted organisms die. That's survival of the fittest. And so the ones that survive, that advantageous characteristic is able to be passed on to the next generation more than the less advantaged characteristics. And over time, this leads to changes in a whole population and potentially the development of a brand new species.